For lesson 5.1 Chinese inventions, we are going to be answering the question, why are the achievements from Tang and Song Dynasty, China, so significant? So first we have woodblock printing, which looks like this. They used it to print copies of books and documents, which is going to make it easier than writing things by hand. They carved the characters into wood. They painted it with ink, and then they put the paper on top so that it would transfer over and that would create the copy. Later on, what made this so significant is that they invented movable type or movable blocks. So this made it a lot easier because now you can reuse the blocks and move them around to create different text or words or pages. Okay, so here we see how a whole document is carved out into one wooden block, right? And at the bottom we see how now you have the characters all in individual little blocks where you can move them around. And then here we see how they're rolling the ink, they're putting the paper on top, and then they're laying it to dry so that it creates an easier copy. And then here we see how they can arrange them to create different text, as I said. The next one is going to be gunpowder. So gunpowder is used for explosives. It's used in war for early cannons and missiles, right? And it's also used in fireworks, right? So it is believed that it was actually discovered by accident by one of the emperors was trying to find an elixir for immortality, and he had his scientists working on this elixir, and then as they were mixing chemicals they created this explosion. So they realized that if you combine gunpowder, sulfur, and saltpeter in different quantities, it sparks and creates an explosive. Once the military found out about this, then they were able to develop weapons using explosives, right? And today we can see how fireworks are used for celebrations. Obviously weapons, right, for warfare changed all over the world after the invention of gunpowder. Tea. Tea is another Chinese discovery, right? It was used for medicinal purposes and in ceremonies for centuries, and then it became a popular item for trade with countries around the world. Okay, so we know that tea comes from plants. It could be also like leaves of the leaves or the flowers in plants, right? They dry up and then you have a loose leaf tea, and there's many different flavors, many different kinds, and we use these teas when we have a stomach ache, when our throat hurts, when we're not feeling well, if we need help getting sleepy, right? If we're feeling anxious and stressed. And so tea, if you think about it today, there are so many people that drink tea, so many tea houses, like boba shops or tea shops, right, that use tea. And to think that in colonial times tea also helped to spark a revolution when the British kept taxing the tea and the colonists decided to throw it overboard and have the Boston Tea Party, right? We can really see how tea has been significant discovery in the world, okay, because a lot of people still drink tea today. But in China, it was used for medicine and for ceremonies, and then it was a big popular trade item. Oh, here they are drinking the tea. Another creation was paper. Let's see. So here are some pictures on the process of making paper. So paper was made from bamboo. They used it for books and written documents. They also used it to create the first paper money. So before they used to write on like bones, and then paper has existed before, but what changed in China was the process of how they created it. So they would chop up all the bamboo and like add other things to it too. Then they would mix it with the water until it made a pulp, and they would use a screen to lift up a thin layer of pulp, and they would let that dry. Once that dried, they would lift off the sheet and it would create a thin paper. So now you can make lightweight books. It makes it easier to record information, and we use paper all over the world. We wouldn't have literature and books without it, right? And we're still using paper today. And for the paper money, it just made it easier to have currency versus always carrying coins, right? So here we see them. They're cutting down all the little chips. They're boiling them together, right? They're mixing it and making it into a pulp. And then here they're putting it in a screen so that it would make like a sheet of paper. Okay, the compass. The compass points north to align with the Earth's magnetic field. So this was made out of lodestone, right? And so it's magnetized with the Earth. It was helpful for navigating during trade, right? Even today, we can see how a compass is very useful. We have one in our phones, right? We use it for GPS navigation. And, we learned about the compass being important so that we know what direction to pray for Mecca, right? Like for Muslims, I'm referring to. And so, So at first, they also used the compass for inner balance, right? To make sure that things were pointing in the right direction. And it's called feng shui. So that, your home and your life is in harmony and in balance. But we can also use it for navigation, which is going to be really useful. Okay, so here we go, navigating. The civil service exam. So this was a test used to pick people for government jobs. It was based on merit, based on Confucianism, and it's extremely difficult and long. So between 650 and 1905, it was an incredible achievement to get work as a government official in Imperial China. Anyone who wanted a civil service job in Imperial China had to pass a very difficult test first. This system ensured that the government officials were learned and intelligent men. In theory, the civil service examination ensured that government officials would be chosen based on their merit rather than on their family connections or wealth. In practice, a young man from a poor family would need a wealthy sponsor if he wanted freedom from work in the fields and access to the tutors and books necessary to successfully pass the demanding exams. However, the possibility that a peasant boy could become a high official was very unusual in the world at the time. The test focused mainly on the writings of Confucius, the 6th century BCE philosopher who wrote extensively on the government and order in society. The exam lasted between 24 and 72 hours. Generally, the candidates were locked in small cells. They were searched ahead of time to make sure that they weren't hiding any notes. They got a board for a desk and a bucket for a toilet. And within the allotted time, they had to write 6 or 8 essays in which they explained ideas from Confucius's work. They had to use those ideas to solve problems in government. Often only 8 or 10% passed the national exam to become imperial officials in the civil service. So I don't want to hear no complaining when we have a test, because it could have been worse. So that was the end of the inventions that we're focusing on. So in your notebook, you're going to make a list of the following achievements, but you're going to skip 2 or more lines between each one, depending on how big you write. So woodblock printing, gunpowder, tea, paper, compass, and civil service exam. Then I want you to add all the information you remember about the achievement and why it's important. If you can't remember anything about it, go back to the video or the text to fill in your notes. So here's an example. So tea was used for medicine, and it was a valuable trading item for the Chinese. Okay, make sure you add more details, right? Go through all the inventions, right? And go back to the video if you need to.